All right, guys, so today we're going to take a look at, it's called the now and then activity, where we're going to start exploring percent of change. And so we're going to be looking at situations where we're going to look at things that are increasing or decreasing, and we're going to talk about how much they increase or decrease using a percent. And we do this because it can give a more accurate picture of how much something is changing by. If we were to say something increased by 2 people, let's say, well, is that 2 people relative to starting with 10 or starting with 100 or starting with 1,000? Because that's a very different situation. And so instead, if we talk about something increasing or decreasing based on a percent, then it makes it a lot easier for us to have a sense of what truly is happening in the situation. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. And I'm going to teach you how to use what's called a percent of change table. And this is really just a way for us to organize our information to then be able to set up a proportion, because that's what we're going to be doing, is solving these problems using proportions. But we're going to use this table to help us set that up. All right, so let's take a look at this first problem. It says the average price of chewing gum in 2004 was 25 cents. What is the price of chewing gum now? All right, so let's look at the left side here. And we're going to look at what it would be if it increased by 20%. So there's our percent of change. It increased by 20%. So as you fill in this chart here, the original percent is always 100%. That always goes in that box. And so if it increased by 20%, then that would be plus 20% because it increased. So we're going to add it. So the new percent would be 120%. Now, the original actual amount, it tells us, is 25 cents. And the question is asking, what is the price of gum now? So it wants us to find what the new price is. So looking at this table, we need to choose 2 of the rows to set up the proportion. So I'm going to choose the original and the new. I'm going to put the original on top and the new on bottom. Although it really doesn't matter, you could flip-flop that. Remember, as long as you are consistent, that's what's important. Okay, so the original is 100 over the new is 120, and then we have 25 cents over X. And now we have our proportion, and so we can just use cross products to solve this. So we've got 100 times X equals 0.25 times 120. Here's where you can use your calculators to do the multiplication. So this is 100x equals equals 30. And then we will divide each side by 100. And we get x equals 0.3 or 0.30. And so we know that the new price is 30 cents. All right, let's look at another one. We're going to skip the right side there and move down to the next problem. All right, again, let's look at the left side here. We could do the right side. I'm just picking one of them to look at some examples here. So we have the price of cornflakes in 1984 was 89 cents, and we're going to figure out what it would be now if it increased by 235%. So that's a pretty big increase, but prices do jump that often. So the first thing we do is the original percent is 100%, so we're going to put that in there. And this one increased by 235%. So again, we're going to add that. So the new percent would be 335. Now my original actual is 89 cents, and I want the new. Now, just so you know, you could put the X here in the change. If you found that, then you would need to add that value to 89 cents. So you could set up your proportion using the original and the change column. you just wouldn't be completely done because the amount you would get is how much it changed by, so you would need to add that at the end. So that's why it's a little bit easier for me to put the X exactly where I need it to be to find the answer. And I'm going to compare the original to the new. And sometimes I'll just put little abbreviations there to help me. So this is 100 over 335 equals 89 cents over X. So again, that table just helps me set up the proportion. Now I'm going to use cross products. And here's where I will use my calculator to do 89 cents times 335. So I get 100x equals 298.15. I'm going to divide each side by 100. And as always, you're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So this would be that x equals 2.98 because the next number is a 1, so it stays as an 8. And I add the dollar sign, so that means now the price is $2.98. That's the new price. All right, let's jump down to the next example because this one's a little bit different. So this one, the question got cut off, but we're going to figure out the percent of change here. So we see the original price and we see the new price, and we are going to figure out how much or by what percent it changed by. So as always, the first thing I need to do as I look at the left side here is put the 100% in the original percent. That is always the original percent. And I see that $1.12 is the original and $2.83 is the new. Now, one option is I could figure out the new percent and then do some subtraction, but I want the change percent, so that's where I'm going to put X. And I want to compare the original to the change, which means I need to figure out what this box is here. Well, if I know the original amount and I know the new amount, I can simply do some subtraction here to figure out what it changed by. So I'm going to do $2.83 minus $1.12, and I see that it changed by $1.71. So I'm going to put that in as the change. And again, I just did some subtraction to figure that out. So now I can set up my proportion comparing the original to the change. So this is 100 over X equals 1.12 over 1.71. Now I just need to use cross products to solve here. So I have 1.12 times X equals 100 times 1 and 71/100ths. I can do some multiplication here. That's 171. And now I need to divide both of these by 1.12. So I'm going to use my calculator to do that. Again, I do need to round here. So I get that X is 152.68 because the third digit behind in the thousandths place is an 8, so it does need to round up. Now, I have found a percent. So my label here is percent, but I'm not done because percents are always positive. We have to indicate whether it increased or decreased, because whether something changed by, let's say, 10%, if it went up 10% or down 10%, it's still a positive 10%. And so again, the only way we can distinguish is by saying increased or decreased. So obviously you can tell here that the price went up. So this was 152.68 or 68/100ths% increase. And I do have to write that word increase. That's important to show whether it went up or down. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, problem number 4 says when a video game console is released for sale, the retail price is $190. After 18 months, the retail price is lowered by 20%. So this would be a percent decrease. What is the retail price of the video game console after 18 months? All right, so let's use our table to start filling in what we know. We know this first box is always 100%. Since the price was lowered, we're going to take away 20% because this is a percent decrease, and that means the new percent is 80%. Now, the original price was $190, so that's my original actual, and it wants to figure out the new price. Again, you could put the X in the change, but then you would have to do some subtraction at the end. So I'm going to compare the original to the new in my proportion. So this is 100 over 80 equals 190 over X. Now I have a proportion. I can use cross products to solve. So this is 100 times X equals 190 times 80. I'm going to do some multiplication here to get 15,200 there. And again, feel free to use your calculators. I'm going to divide by 100, and that means X equals 152. Now I got to think through what my label is, and since I have found the retail price, my label is dollars. So that means that once this video game console, the price was lowered or decreased by 20%, that the new price is $152. All right, let's look at one last problem. Number 5 says sweatshirts at the Westminster bookstore are on sale for $35. They were originally $60. Find the percent the price decreased by. I'd like you to pause the video now and try to see if you can fill in this box or chart on your own. When you think you have it, press play to see if you're right. All right, so I filled in first the things I can see directly from this problem. I know the original percent is always 100, the original price was 60, the new price is 35. But in this problem, I want to figure out the percent of change. And so that's where X is gonna go. And so again, I need this box here. Well, if I know that the original price was 60 and the new price is 35, I can do some subtraction to figure out that it changed by $25. I just did 60 minus 35. So now in my proportion, I'm going to set up the original to the change. So this is 100 over X equals 60 over 25. Again, I'm going to use cross products here, so we're doing lots of solving proportions. I divide each side by 60. And I get X equals, again, I'm going to need to round here, so 41.67 because it's going to round up. Now I need to think through my label. And it's asking me to find a percent. That's what I have found. So obviously I need a percent sign. But again, whenever we're talking about percent of change, you have to indicate if it increased or decreased. And on this situation, this is a decrease because the price went down. So we would say that the answer is 41.67% decrease. So hopefully you have gained a little bit of an understanding of percent of change, what it is, and how we can use a table or chart here to help us organize our information to set up our proportion. Have a great day.